It's an honor to be here. Javi and his team have done so much, I think, for the industry, and so we're just going to show how we use cmBuilder at Skanska. Dean Lewis, Director of Mass Timber Prefabrication. I work on all of our timber projects across the nation. Just a quick background on Skanska. I'll go through background, kind of how we use it, and then what we see as the next steps. Big overview of Skanska. We're an international company. We work in both buildings as GC, also civil, and then we also have a development arm, and then we also do a lot of sustainability consulting and a lot of CM consulting for owners. So we kind of touch a little bit of everything, but today, just going to focus on buildings and mass timber. So our mass timber portfolio, we learn a lot from internationally, our friends across the pond, but we have a good amount of projects, both West Coast and East Coast, and we'll show some of theirs here today. Real quick, our journey started a while ago before, we had BIM and all that stuff. Skanska was self-performing heavy timber, traditional heavy timber with tongue and groove for the past 20 years. Fast forward, we had our first CLT installation about a decade ago, and obviously, as you know, mass timber was CLT, the CNC technology, obviously bringing it to the forefront, and now we've worked with other types of mass timber that are, when we say modern mass timber, and then as that's happened, also the buildings have changed. Now we got buildings that are almost all mass timber. This project here, 2 stories, 35,000 square foot building, goes up in 4 weeks, only a few pieces of steel at the elevator and stairs. It's pretty incredible. But a lot of our buildings, and what I'll show today, are hybrids. Concrete and steel, we need them. We can't build timber foundations, and typically our lateral systems are steel brace frames or steel moment frames. And so we have a lot of hybrid projects, which requires kind of a hybrid approach to how we deliver these projects. And so again, we're a little bit unique in the fact that some of our projects, we act as developer, GC, self-perform, and also sustainability consultant. But again, for today's presentation, just focus on the GC and the self-perform perspective. Okay, the juicy stuff, a little bit. Prefab advantage. I want to talk about this real quick. I know a lot of people are familiar with that in this room. But to focus on why it's important and why we utilize cmBuilder for it, talk about the quality and the enhancement of doing stuff off-site. Also the schedule savings. We find when we do a kit of parts approach, you can get around maybe a 20% schedule savings. If you do full volumetric modular, now you're pushing maybe 40%. But then you look at the cost. There's the raw cost of the material, which is actually more than if you did it site built. But the advantages is really from that direct purchasing, and then also the schedule savings. So that's something to consider. And then did the design. There's something else I think people miss with prefab sometimes, because if you can get the right sub or self-perform parts of it yourself, then you can get the engineering, all the manufacturing and fabrication all under one umbrella, and then you can really start to build some efficiencies. Now, that's not without its requirements. Obviously, the design has to be coordinated more up front. There has to be more upfront planning, more money required from the owner to be deposited earlier, make commitments. Owners typically don't like that, so that's the challenges. And then the bookends, and this is where cmBuilder comes in. What's happening off-site? What's happening on-site? Where is the integration from? What's it like when it's coming off the truck? What sub is going to handle it from the truck to site? And then who's making the fixings on-site? And that's really the coordination piece, which up until a few years ago I feel like has really been enhanced by technology, and obviously cmBuilder is one of those. So today, just going to cover, these are kind of the 5 aspects and examples of how Skanska uses cmBuilder. There's probably more that are out there. I know Francis is here from our VDC team. He uses it a lot as well, and there's a lot of ways that you can use it, but these are just examples from my perspective. So the first one, proposal. Project comes in the door. Typically we know the site, we know maybe we got a massing, but really you're looking for the owner, what's their goal? Logistics, or is those a challenge? Are they worried about safety? Most owners are worried about site disruption, community engagement, and that piece. That's really where we see cmBuilder playing a part. So this one is one where we showed the owner this is a pursuit, so we don't have the project yet, we're competing for it, and we're showing them kind of our plan and talking them through how to build this. And this video is going a little bit quick, but you can see how detailed it can get. So we actually had a model which is about LOD 350, and you can see the difference in the panels, and we're actually looking at how to provide quality by building the building in sections first, and not just building all the walls out, but building the walls then roof to cover it and protect it before we move on to that next section of the building. And so that was something that the owner really liked and appreciated that we had put thought into that, and that's just one example. Another interesting thing with cmBuilder. So this is actually a VE conversation, so you can see the steel brace frames and the steel purlins there. And we showed how we could take those out by putting in a steel cable truss. And so just by manipulating cmBuilder and using that visual, it's a communication tool. And that's really what it comes down to, right? It's all about communication. It's one thing to say it, but when you're showing the owner that you've already thought about it and you've already implemented it from a design standpoint, that's a game changer. And yeah, you could do this in Revit, but honestly, the visuals and the ability to manipulate the model really quickly, I mean, did this in 15, 20 minutes and created the video, plop it in, and send it to the owner for them to look at. So that's the proposal phase. Then you get into pre-con. Now you got the project, how are you gonna work with it? And these days, we've seen a lot of design teams come to the forefront, and we're getting models in design that are, right at 100. This is a 100% SD model, schematic design, and that's a LOD 350 model with, everything quantified, even some connections in there. It's extremely helpful, right? But how do you take this and you bid it out to suppliers or try to coordinate with subs? And again, this is where cmBuilder comes into place. So this is another project that we got. There's a 100% SD model, and we're taking that model, and because you can see it's a hybrid building, you got steel brace frames, and then you got a timber gravity system. And so being able to take trades through this and show them, okay, here's your scope, here's how we're planning on building the building, here's the install sequences, 2-level lifts for the brace frames, and then timbers following it behind. That is an immensely much easier tool to show a sub in a very short, 1-hour meeting. And you can cover all this, and they get what you're going for. They understand what the limitations are, they understand the logistics, and they understand what they're trying to bid. So, incredibly helpful tool in that aspect. This is another example. So some of you might recognize this. This is a fun little project, which the example I give with this is, so sometimes with projects, you're trying to kind of sell the project to your team. You're trying to sell it to project executives, account managers, your self-perform team, the superintendents, and sometimes a visual is just 10 times easier to explain, especially when you get all those individuals. That hourly rate is kicking in the meeting room, and you want to be able to show very quickly, in a span of a few minutes, what the goal of the project is and what you're doing, and what the risks are, and how you're going to approach it. And so this is just an example. This is actually an art installation, which we had looked at, and so just put this video together really quickly to kind of show our team, hey, this is what is being proposed, a very small structure, it's in the middle of a park, how are we going to get there, how are we going to unload it, where's our exact site, all those questions answered in a video in a few minutes. Okay, now the real meat of it, in my opinion. This is where we would use the majority of our cases for cmBuilder, is operations and logistics, because especially for prefab and mass timber, everything runs and dies by your trucking and getting a truck in and out of the site. You can install an element in 8 minutes or less, but really the hang-up comes with the trucking and logistics of getting your materials in and out. And so even from a high level, looking at a site really quick with your team, making them realize, this is a project that we were looking at early on, conceptual of 8-story mass timber building, downtown Seattle hub. They've got restrictions on how many trees you can move out. Looking at the lane restrictions, what that's going to cost to close a lane, what it look like if we close 2 lanes down, how many trucks can we cycle in and out of the site, and just looking at it and realizing that this thing's got some real hair on it, just from a logistical standpoint, that we should probably account for when we're going through pre-con as well. Other logistics planning, so definitely the sequence of assembly. Sometimes you're getting things off the truck, and then you got to move it from one place to another, or we're assembling elements on those objects. And then specific trade scope. So example of this, another project we have upcoming, we're going to be self-performing and assembling some trusses that are long span, 110 feet long on a gym. So looking at the crane placement, how is our crews going to assemble that on site? What's the lifting apparatus look like? Sizing the crane, working with the crane company to look at what type of spreader bar we're using. All of that, again, in a visual that we can coordinate across disciplines from our team, our self-perform teams, crane operator, and our tradespeople that are assembling those trusses. Just another example if I were really using it. Okay, installation sequencing. So this is another piece. This is a project actually in downtown Bellevue, very tight site. And we looked at, once you get this up, you got a lot of tight constraints in terms of space. And then where's that crane going to be? Where's the truck going to be? And you can see actually that we have different stacks of materials on the ground. And if you look closely, it's kind of hard to see. These were moment frame, long span beams, flitch beams that we had to do in the field. And so, making sure that was the whole purpose of this model in this case was to make sure that we had enough space to do that work, let alone pick that member up and install it. And so again, you got these long members that have to be, lifted into a tight site, and everything has to be accurate. That's a sloped roof, so you got a bevel cut on the bottom of the glue lam, and you're not going to want to be waiting around to have guys jockeying that material in the field, because you want everything to go in tight. This is another example. So this is all from a skylight that we wanted to lift in one piece. Talk about prefabrication and enhancing the speed. This saved weeks because we lifted this 12-foot by 40-foot skylight into place. And again, just another example of how to use it. More detailed approach as well. So this is a LOD 400 model. Disregard the little skylight piece that's hovering there, but you can see the hardware. You can even see some of the screws that are in the model. Not that we necessarily need those sometimes, but this is really what comes to, you compare this to the old school way we used to do it, of sitting in a trailer with your trades and try to point out a 2D drawing of where your teams are supposed to be. This creates so much more situational awareness. Where's the safety harness? Who's on the truck? Who's on the ground? Who's up on the roof? And this is really more of a safety tool, if anything, with our trades, of letting them know where they're supposed to be and create situational awareness. And then the other topic that's going to be hot for mass timber, and Javi and his team are going to benefit from this, is the other trades. Because you can erect a building really quick and be the hero for mass timber, but you can only be as fast as your other trades. And the example that I give is we got a 12-story project that we're working on, and if you're familiar with mass timber, the new codes actually require that we chase the building up with our facade, so we can only be 4 stories ahead of our facade. So this video will show it here. We got 2-story lifts on the steel. We're chasing it up with the timber. You can see our concrete coming in, getting that leveled out on the floor. Stick-built facade on the ground floor, getting started with that as quickly as possible. And then you can start to see the facade materials being laid out on that level 2. And we're getting our temporary braces out of the way and getting that deck above poured. And as we move up to that next floor and the sequences start to repeat, what you'll see is then coming down with the spider crane and starting to install that curtain wall. And the key there is now we can't just be heroes on the self-perform, side of install, because we have to coordinate everything with the facade installer as well. And that's really going to be a key for GCs. I think a lot of the attention has been on suppliers, fabricators, installers, and those are really key items. But a lot of the risk is right here. Because again, if you go too fast on your timber install, then you're not going to be code compliant, and you're going to have the fire department out there stopping your project because your facade needs to catch up. So from a risk mitigation standpoint, it's the ultimate tool. Okay, then the OAC perspective. We haven't used this yet, but owners are interested. I think the main thing for here is, like we said before, community involvement and just making sure the community is aware. Our biggest thing is communication and transparency. And so this was a project, huge site, logistics kind of changing across the site as there's a bunch of infill, there's large retaining walls, so a lot of dewatering as well. And just basically having this as a visual tool that we could update as the project is being constructed and give that to the owner. And we link it to a website, and the owner uses this tool to basically show the community where the project's at and what's going on, what's coming up. And it's a very easy visual tool for owners to use. So it has been of interest. No one has used it to the extent yet, but this could be the first project. And one other example in there that I didn't mention is probably permitting. Going back to this 12-story that we were talking about here, I think coordinate with cities and making sure that they're aware of where our plan is. Because the other thing with this is, temporary egress in the site, crane tiebacks, man hoist. You can't install the full facade. There's going to be openings in the facade that you have to account for. So I guess there's 6 uses that we could use it for. Put permitting up there. But yeah, so that's how Skanska utilizes cmBuilder. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully it sparks some ideas. Look forward to seeing other presentations and how everyone else utilizes it. And thank you.